A mother abducted by her unfaithful spouse will help arrive in time? My mother, Marion, has always been the type who remembers everyone's coffee order and notices the draft before anyone else does. Lately, she wrapped sweaters around herself even when the house was warm. She said the thermostat was fine. She said Greg, her husband of 12 years, was fine. Greg is a man who introduces himself with his job title and his golf handicap, in that order. He laughs in clean, empty bursts, as if someone is filming him. I used to think he just craved approval. Now I think he craved a mirror. The red flags didn't wave at first, they whispered. A new watch, bought when his consulting retainers supposedly paused. A floral fragrance on his jacket that wasn't Marion's Tiro's. Phone calls he took on the patio, back turned to the window, hand cupped around his mouth like the wind might eavesdrop. When I asked, he joked that middle-age smells like the department store. Marion said I should let it go and hugged me in that careful way that says, "Please don't make this worse." At dinner, he teased her about senior moments, when she mislaid the salt. The smirk never reached his eyes. She laughed because women are trained to sand down a rough one. He posted their date night selfies with captions about forever teammates, then criticized her for using the wrong filter. There were quiet apologies afterward from the hallway, his voice low, hers almost inaudible. I started taking notes, not the wild scribble kind, just time, place, tone. Not stalking, not vigilante, a habit from my job, the way community journalists learn to hold shapes steady under bright light. Money tightened. Greg suggested she sell heirloom jewelry to simplify until a client paid. Marion said not yet. He booked a weekend away for wellness and reconnection. Paid on a card she didn't recognize, then canceled because her attitude wasn't in the right headspace. It sounded like a corporate memo scolding a human heart. When she finally told him she wanted space, he smiled with all his teeth and brought home tulips. "Let's take a drive," he said. "Just us, no noise." Then my mother whispered, "He promised to drive," and my skin prickled. I didn't discover infidelity by breaking into anything or following anyone across town. It arrived like weather, a comment from his former colleague about Greg's friend who loved the new rooftop bar, a receipt left inside a jacket pocket from a restaurant that serves prix for two, a photo that floated into my feed of a familiar, expensive watch reflecting bokeh lights beside a woman's manicured hand. When I showed Marion, she said, "It could be old." Her voice collapsed on the last word. I tried a measured approach. "Greg, people have seen you out," I said over brunch, my hands steady around the mug. He frowned like the room had offended him. "Alex, everything with you becomes an investigation," he said. "Marion and I are working on us. Your cynicism is a wedge." He tapped his spoon twice, an old tell, and asked the server for another napkin he didn't need. Marion folded and refolded her paper napkin into smaller squares, as if making order would make truth. "I just want honesty," she said, and he reached across the table, grazed her wrist, and held her eyes too long. "Honesty is complicated," he said, as if that were wisdom. I drove Mom home. We sat in the driveway and watched the porch light blink on with the timer. She exhaled. "He's embarrassed," she said. "He's always been afraid of looking small." I didn't say that only small men obsess about looking small. I said, "You're allowed to protect your peace." She nodded and texted him to say she needed a night at my place to think. He replied with a heart. Then 3 more, like confetti that dissolves on contact. That evening I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence I couldn't erase. "I think he's preparing a story without us." Greg loves narratives with him centered as misunderstood hero. He loves gestures that photograph well. He hates consequences that last longer than a caption. At 9:17 p.m. a text popped. "Quick errand, back by 10. "Quick errand," Marion said when she grabbed her tote. "He left something at the pharmacy." He sounded gentle. Gentle can be a costume. I offered to drive. She kissed my cheek and said, "I'll be an hour. I want to show him I'm not hostile." She wore her blue cardigan, the one she calls her courage sweater. I watched her taillights wink around the corner, that tiny red bow tying itself to the night. At 10:15, I called. Straight to voicemail. 10:30, again. I texted, "You okay?" A minute later, a reply from Greg in the family thread. "All good. Marion's decompressing at a friend's. Give her space." He added a photo of a herbal tea steeping beside a hardcover self-help book. The tea looked staged, The copy of the book suspiciously pristine. I breathed, counted 5, and made one intentional choice. No reckless drive-bys, no shouting matches on doorsteps. I wrote down times. I called Mom's sister to say, I don't know where she is. I phoned the non-emergency line and explained I wasn't reporting a crime instruction manual style. I was reporting a deviation from her pattern. The dispatcher's voice was calm, practiced, kind. She told me how to proceed and what they could do. I followed every ethical step and gave only what was needed. At 11:20, our neighbor Lena texted, I saw Greg loading a small, overnight bag earlier. Thought it was odd. She added that a courier had dropped something the previous afternoon, a glossy envelope stamped with a wellness logo. He seemed nervous, she wrote. He asked if my husband still has that pressure washer, then laughed to himself. None of that proves anything. All of it proves a pressure building. By midnight, the family chat split into teams. A cousin wrote, let them work it out. An old friend DM'd me a screenshot of Greg's new public post, a photo of Marion's favorite lake at dusk with the caption, sometimes love needs quiet water. He had tagged no one and everyone. Comments bloomed with prayer hands and advice from strangers. I dialed Mom again, and this time someone answered and breathed my name. Marion, I said. The breathing paused, then a man's voice, thick and oddly courteous. Wrong number. The line cut. I stared at my phone until the reflection of my own face looked like a stranger. I took a breath, documented the time, and gave that detail to the officer handling the report. Lena knocked on my door in slippers and a hoodie. I didn't want to text this part, she said, eyes bright with adrenaline she hadn't asked for. She told me she'd received a group message earlier from a neighbor's chat. A local venue posted about hosting a private, restorative couples seminar reserved under initials matching Greg's. No address was listed publicly, only marketing mood words and a date range that started tonight. She also showed me a short exchange with Greg from yesterday when he asked if she could pick up a package for Marion because surprises are better from friends. The package was a silk sleep mask and chamomile bath salts, props for a reconciliation he could photograph. I don't present this as detective brilliance. It was ordinary noticing. A receipt here, a phrase there, a man obsessed with optics telegraphing his intent to look benevolent while tightening the leash. I shared what we had with the officer. They logged it, explained what they could pursue, and reminded me to stay reachable. No side quests. No heroics. In the morning, a clerk from a community center called me back after I left a generic inquiry. Had there been any last-minute bookings for wellness events? She couldn't disclose specifics, but she did offer something benign and legal, an invoice number and a public confirmation that a seminar had been moved from Friday to Thursday evening. The timestamp mattered. It placed Greg in planning mode while telling his followers he and Marion were taking space. The story he curated couldn't hold its shape under daylight. I drove to Mom's house to feed her cat and water the plants. Greg had left the tulips in a clear vase on the table. Their petals were rigid, like plastic. Even flowers looked exhausted by him. The clerk's stamp date made Greg's cheerful alibi collapse in seconds. I called the officer, relayed the timestamp, and sent the neutral records I was allowed to share. We agreed on a simple plan. I would remain available, gather only benign confirmations, and not publish anything that could compromise safety. I posted a short message on my private account. If you've seen Marion since last night, please DM me. No speculation, please. I did not list numbers, addresses, or schedules. I did not invite vigilantes. I asked for kindness and time. Lena brewed coffee strong enough to hold me upright. I've seen couples like this at the clinic, she said softly. Control dressed like care. She opened her messages and showed me one more oddity. 2 weeks ago, Greg asked if she knew a quiet place with no cell noise where people could truly listen. She had shrugged it off then. Now her brow knit. He rehearsed this, I said. He rehearsed gentleness. Midday, evidence drifted in like leaves. A friend of a friend messaged that she'd seen Greg at a fuel station yesterday, printing a receipt and tucking it carefully into his wallet. Another person, a former colleague of his, wrote from a throwaway account. He's been bragging about a reset weekend to make Marion grateful again. He booked things under initials. He cares more about the album than the marriage. I sent that to the officer. They thanked me and reminded me they were pursuing the necessary channels. Then the thing that tipped scale without revealing a map. A customer support email forwarded by an acquaintance who worked at a nonprofit said a fundraiser space had been reserved earlier that week by someone with Greg's initials, then abruptly canceled this morning. The cancellation fee matched a charge on the benign invoice from the community center. It drew a line through his calendar in ink. The narrative he posted, Serene Lake, Quiet Hearts, wasn't a mistake. It was theater. I breathed, called my aunt to sit with me, and stared at Marion's blue cardigan draped over my chair. It still held the shape of her shoulders. Then a rideshare receipt surfaced, with her nickname scrawled in quotes. The rideshare receipt wasn't a map, it was a mood. Under passenger name, someone had typed Marion's childhood nickname in quotes, the one she never uses with strangers. The timestamp overlapped with Greg's lakeside caption by 9 minutes. I forwarded the image, scrubbed of identifiers, to the officer and asked if there was anything more I should do. Stay reachable, she said. Keep notes. Don't chase. I breathed through my molars and practiced doing exactly that. At noon, a man who identified himself as a rideshare driver messaged my private post. He didn't give me a plate, a route, or coordinates. He wrote one careful paragraph. She seemed tired. He answered her phone for her. He kept saying, "We'll unplug, remember? Offline time." She told me she gets carsick if the windows are up. He'd also already phoned the non-emergency line about what he remembered. I thanked him, sent the message to the officer, and closed my laptop like it held heat. Lena refilled our mugs. He wants an audience and no witnesses, she said. That's why all the Serenity posts. I nodded. Greg had always been a curated man. People like that believe paper is reality. Invoices, captions, certificates of attendance, certificates of progress. If you can frame it, you can call it true. At 2, Mom's tablet chimed on the kitchen counter. I almost ignored it, then remembered she lets me silence her calendar. A monthly subscription reminder crawled across the screen. A relationship renewal package, auto-renewed 3 weeks ago. She doesn't buy subscriptions for love. Greg does. He'd paid for a program that promised structured reconnection and gentle accountability. Words that sound like kindness when you don't listen to their edges. My aunt arrived with a casserole no one wanted to eat and the kind of hug that holds you upright. We made a list on sticky notes. What we knew, what we suspected, what only authorities could verify. We crossed out anything that smelled like a chase. Every time my chest accelerated, I looked at the blue cardigan and said out loud, "Dignity first." By late afternoon, Greg added a new post. A boomerang of 2 mugs clinking beside a stone fire pit. The caption read, "Working through it." Comments poured in with advice, flattery, and a few sharp questions. I didn't respond. I sent the public timestamp to the officer and opened the windows so the house could breathe. Priya's voice memo ended with, "You should know he practiced this script for weeks, almost word for word." Priya's voice was low and precise, the way careful people talk when they want to be useful but not reckless. "He called me 2 weeks ago," she said. Said he was planning a reconciliation retreat for optics. His word, optics. He wanted to know what phrases play well online when partners are rebuilding trust. I told him to apologize privately and stop chasing applause. She exhaled. He laughed like I'd misread the assignment. I typed her statement as she spoke and asked if I could share it with the officer. "Yes," she said. "Use my first name. No workplace info." It was enough. A story about a story is still a story, and Greg's was unraveling from the edges he'd trimmed too neatly. By evening, our group text looked like a school of fish panicking in a small bay. Cousin Lori wrote, "If she wanted space, let her have space." Lena replied, "Space isn't silence behind someone else's phone." An uncle asked if we could avoid drama, by which he meant avoid witnesses. Greg posted another lake photo, captioned, "Grateful for quiet leaders." He never says nothing when he can say the wrong something. The officer called to request the benign receipts again. They were compiling a timeline with what they could legally access. She reminded me, no posting addresses. No guessing. I thought of the subscription reminder, the community center invoice, the canceled fundraiser fee. Like lacquered leaves, they layered into a shape you could hold without cutting yourself. A small, breakable hope arrived at 9. A venue manager emailed back to confirm that a couple's wellness circle scheduled for Friday had requested an early check-in Thursday. No address, just a reference code and a note. "Please ensure privacy. Participant is public figure." Greg is not a public figure. Greg is public to himself. I forwarded it, hand steady. My aunt pressed my shoulder. What's our plan if he invites us to talk? I didn't want to imagine his stage. We bring calm and paper, I said. We don't bring a fight. 5 minutes later, Greg texted me directly. Come by tomorrow morning. Let's align. Bring Lena, if that makes you feel safer. I'm committed to Marion's healing. He added a line I can't forget. She'll be a changed woman after the weekend. Greg opened the door the next morning wearing a sweater I'd never seen and a smile I didn't recognize. His living room smelled like expensive candles and lemon polish. Nothing was out of place except the tulips, now browning at the edges like applause that went on too long. Lena stood at my left. My aunt took the chair nearest the window, as if light could negotiate with lies. Coffee? Greg asked, already pouring. He performed gentleness the way actors perform an accent, technically correct, emotionally hollow. Marion is resting, he said. I took her somewhere with professionals. The work is intense, but necessary. He touched his chest. We're in good hands. He never said whose hands. He never said where. I unfolded my notes. We're here to keep things clear, I said. We're coordinating with the officer, and we're hopeful for Marion's safe return. His jaw ticked. Safe? She's with me, he said, then corrected himself. With us. With qualified people. Lena kept her voice even. Greg, she told me last week she didn't consent to retreats. She asked for time. Did that change? He smiled at her like a teacher smiling at a student who almost understands. Consent is complicated when someone is hurting, he said. We walked him through what we had. The invoice timestamp, the subscription, the canceled fundraiser, the manager's note that check-in moved up. I did not say where. I did not say who wrote what. I said, your captions contradict your calendar. He tried on indignation, and it didn't fit. You're making me the villain because it's easier than admitting Marion spiraled, he said. She wanted guidance. I provided it. My phone buzzed. The officer's number. I asked Greg if he minded me answering on speaker. Transparency, I said. He nodded with theatrical patience. The officer's voice was calm. She said they were following up on a location associated with the reference code and had reached someone who confirmed contact with Marion. We are coordinating next steps, she said, and we ask that you do not travel. Greg's smile fissured. He palmed his phone like a talisman and turned away under the pretense of coughing. The word lawyer slid between his teeth like a seed. Then his phone vibrated again, loud in the quiet room, and he fumbled it to his ear before stepping toward the hallway. A voice bled through the speaker, small but unmistakable. Tell Alex I'm all right, but don't let him narrate me. For 1 second, the room stopped breathing. Greg froze, then pressed the phone to his chest as if he could push sound back into silence. Wrong call, he said. My aunt lifted her chin. Marion, she asked, voice trembling with a hope that frightened me. Greg kept his eyes on me like we were the only two people in the room. Boundaries, Alex, he said. You're always crossing them. He ended the call with a theatrical sigh and scrolled, pretending to be inconvenienced by technology. I didn't argue. I wrote down the time and the sentence, every word of it, including the part where she used don't let him narrate me. Marion hates being turned into content. It's why she barely posts and why Greg posts enough for both of them. The officer, still on the line in my palm, had caught it too. We heard that, she said quietly. Thank you for staying measured. Please remain where you are. Greg started pacing. This is what happens when families listen to outsiders, he said. Now everyone thinks they're heroes. We're doing intensive work. She's decompressing between sessions. He picked up a printed brochure from the console table and slid it toward me like a menu. It was full of adjectives and white space. Nothing on it said where. Everything on it said control. I photographed it and handed it back. Lena shifted. When she's home, she said, we're going to have to unlearn this. All of us. Greg barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. When she's home, he said, you'll see results. The house seemed suddenly overdecorated, like a stage after the audience leaves. I could hear the refrigerator hum and the tiniest scrape of my pen as I wrote. There are two kinds of people in a crisis. Those who move toward light, and those who dim the room so their story can keep its shape. Greg reached for the dimmer switch. I watched his thumb hover and thought of Marion's blue cardigan folded over my chair. The officer asked one more time that we remain available for contact. We agreed. Uniforms at the door froze Greg's smile into brittle porcelain. Two officers stood framed in the doorway like the room had grown boundaries. Greg's showman smile tightened around the edges, then lifted again as if hinged. "Morning," he said, projecting sincerity the way some people project slides. Bright, glossy, hard to look at for long. The taller officer asked to speak in the living room. We all sat, our chairs at honest angles. I placed my notebook on my knee and didn't touch it. They asked neutral questions. When Marion left, when I last spoke to her, whether there had been recent changes. I answered the way you speak to people holding a lantern, plain, steady, grateful for light. Greg interrupted to announce that Marion was participating in intensive restorative work and that outsiders were inflaming things. The officer nodded, unreadable. "We've made contact associated with a booking reference," she said. "We're arranging for a wellness check and a conversation with Marion directly." She didn't say where. She didn't need to. The air in Greg's chest seemed to lose a few pounds. "Do you have proof she asked for this?" Lena said. Greg spread his hands, palms up, as if truth might land there like rain. "Consent is a journey," he said. "It's bigger than a single yes." The officer wrote something small on a page and closed the notebook. "Consent is clear or it isn't," she said evenly, "and it can be withdrawn." A phone chirped. For a fraction of a second, Greg glanced toward the hallway again, the way you look toward a mirror when you're afraid it will disagree. The officer's radio murmured. She listened, then rose. "We're going to step outside and make a call," she said. "Mr. Halpern, please remain available." He nodded like gentleman actor number 3 and smoothed the hem of his new sweater. I stared at the tulips, now collapsing into themselves. I wanted to throw them away and keep them forever, both. My aunt whispered, "Breathe." I thought of the cardigan on my chair at home, how fabric can hold shape when people are asked to hold too much. I kept my hands open on my knees and counted the refrigerator hum. The officers returned, softer around the eyes. "We're arranging a neutral location," the taller one said. "Medical first. Conversation next." Greg's jaw ticked again. "I'll drive," he offered, already reaching for keys. "That won't be necessary," she replied. Silence filled the mouth of the hallway like fog. Then a car door shut outside, followed by a voice I knew from before all this theater. "Alex." The word was small but steady, like a pebble dropped in a still bowl. I stood so fast my knee clipped the coffee table. Marion was at the threshold between rooms, flanked by an officer and a woman with a badge I didn't read. She looked like herself in a mirror tightened one click too far. Blue cardigan. No makeup except the kind you put on for courage. Her eyes found mine and refused to look away. "I'm okay," she said, before Greg could translate her. "I'm not okay with how." She thanked the officers and the woman with the badge for staying. Then she did something I will remember when I am old. She sat down in the chair beneath the window, sun on her hands, light on her cheekbones, and asked for water without apology. We gave her a glass that did not shake when she held it. Greg rose with a smile flattened into customer service. "Babe, tell them how much progress we made," he said, soft with performance. Marion's head tilted like she'd heard a familiar song played off-key. "I asked for space," she said, calm as a winter lake. "What I got was a schedule." She looked at me. "He answered my phone for me. He used my nickname." Greg's mouth formed a surprised O, as if he had been betrayed by the script. We kept it simple. No addresses. No diagrams. Marion described being driven for conversation after a quick errand, how her phone rested on a table out of reach, how updates were posted for community support, while doors stayed closed for focus. She said she felt managed. She said she had asked to leave and been told later, after the next exercise. The officer listened, pen moving only when needed. "Thank you," she said. "Let's focus on care and boundaries today." Lena slid a folder forward containing the benign paper trail, subscription reminders, public posts, timestamps anyone could verify. We did not publish them, we documented them. Greg tried indignation again and switched to sadness when it fit better. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "I invested in us." Marion's jaw tightened. "You invested in your reflection," she said. "You used me as a mirror." The officer suggested we break so medical staff could see Marion at a neutral clinic. "After that," she said, "we can discuss next steps." Greg lowered himself back onto the sofa, a saint in a painting surrendering to light. "Of course," he said, voice light with martyrdom. At the clinic, Marion reached for my hand and whispered, "There's something else you need to see." The something else was a small square of hotel stationery folded twice, the kind of paper that wants to behave. Marion slid it to me in the quiet exam room, while a nurse checked her vitals and spoke about hydration. The note was dated 2 weeks ago in Greg's thin, neat handwriting, the one he uses when he plans things he wants to look inevitable. It read, "Reconnection itinerary, capture proof of progress, limit outside noise, keep phones away." There were no addresses, no routes, just phrases, arrows, the language of staging. In the margin, a line that made my mouth go dry. Leverage friend network for credibility. I asked Marion if she wanted the officer to have it. "Yes," she said. "I'm tired of being helpful to a story." She pulled from her bag the silk sleep mask Lena had received and a printed email from the venue confirming the early check-in Greg had requested. "He practiced," she said. "He even practiced his apologies." Her voice broke, just once, then found its shape again. The officer photographed the pages and returned them. "Thank you," she said. "We'll proceed carefully." She outlined, in humane terms, not tactical ones, what support could look like. A brief rest, a conversation about protective steps if Marion wanted them, resources for counseling that didn't sound like sales pitches. "No forced paths," she emphasized. "Your choice matters." Marion nodded. "Choice matters," she repeated, like a person relearning her own name. Outside the clinic, Greg posted a grayscale selfie with the caption, "Trust the process." Comments swelled. Hearts, swords, scriptural fragments, whispers about loyalty. Priya sent me a screenshot and a single line. "He thinks PR is CPR." The image made my skin hum, not with rage exactly, but with recognition. He was still narrating us to strangers. He was always going to narrate if the crowd stayed. That night we met at my aunt's. Lights low, phones face down. We agreed on one calm, documented reveal for family only. A measured timeline with redacted images, no addresses, no faces, just contradictions laid beside each other until they formed their own sentence. "We won't dunk," I said. "We'll demonstrate." When the living room filled with the creak of chairs and careful throats, I passed around the folder. Greg arrived late, breathless with indignation that made a show of being concerned. "Is this a tribunal?" he asked. "This is clarity," I said. "You're welcome to participate." We set the papers on the coffee table and watched them speak. Greg threatened a lawsuit and accidentally attached his own contradictory itinerary. Silence landed like a soft book dropped on carpet. Greg's email flickered on my aunt's TV, mirrored from someone's phone by reflex. The attachment he meant to hold back. Reconciliation schedule _final 2. Open to reveal time blocks labeled with phrases that now sounded like warnings. Phone-free immersion, story alignment, gratitude capture, boundary reset, guided. None of it named a place. All of it named a posture. Control rehearsed as care. He lunged for an explanation. "It's normal to plan counseling," he said. "Structure helps." Marion folded her hands. "Structure without consent is a cage," she said. A cousin who had been skeptical coughed into her fist. An uncle stared at the rug as if geography might save him. Priya, on speaker, calmly repeated what she had already shared with me. Greg asked for language that performs well, not language that heals. "I told him to apologize quietly," she said. "He wanted applause. We didn't post anything. We didn't leak. We didn't gloat. We wrote a simple, private note to relatives who weren't present. Marion is safe and resting. She will share what she chooses when she chooses. Please do not speculate or post on her behalf." Half the thread replied with heart emojis. The other half replied with advice. We thanked everyone and changed nothing. The next morning, the wellness program sent a letter that slid all the way around responsibility. Participants set their own boundaries. It read, "And facilitators cannot control personal choices." Which is true and also not. Programs walk a legal balance beam. People like Greg use the slack beneath. We filed the letter in a folder labeled "Paper Doesn't Blink." The first argument between Marion and me happened over breakfast when I suggested a public statement. "I don't want to feed his stage," she said. "I want a quiet kitchen and a plan." I heard my own urgency ring like a badly tuned chime. I sat down, took a breath, and tried again. "Then let's make a plan," I said. "One that doesn't perform." We drafted a list. Her doctor, a counselor recommendation from a friend who doesn't have a brochure, a brief conversation with the officer about next steps, a polite boundary for relatives who want updates as proof that things are normal. That afternoon, Lena took Marion to the park. They walked by the lake Greg had used as a prop and didn't take a picture. When they came back, Marion looked like herself in softer focus. Edges still there, glare gone. "No more rehearsals," she said, and smiled a tired smile. A thick envelope arrived addressed in Greg's neat hand, heavy with papers that turned into smoke under daylight. Inside the envelope, printouts of their progress assignments, a handwritten recommitment pledge with places for signatures, and a note that said, "Let's not throw away the work." Marion laid the papers out like placemats, then gathered them again and slid them back into the envelope without tearing or dramatics. "I'm not throwing," she said quietly. "I'm setting down." She wrote a short response on a plain card. "I do not consent to further programs. Please direct all communication through counsel." No flourishes. No hashtags. Paper that behaves. The consequences didn't roar. They arrived on little feet. A friend who loved couple photos more than couples gently drifted away. An in-law rescinded a holiday invitation until things calmed down. A neighbor who had always waved stopped, then pretended to check her mailbox much more often. But other circles widened. Lena's clinic friends brought soup and stories that didn't make Marion feel like a headline. Priya forwarded information for a support group with chairs that face each other, not a stage. My aunt learned how to make Marion's favorite lentil stew without asking for a recipe. Greg posted less. When he did, the captions felt colder, as if the room he performed into had lost oxygen. His former colleague sent one last message. "He's floating an idea about writing a book," it read. We told him to take a seat. The wellness program's second letter was more careful than the first. It thanked us for the feedback, clarified boundaries, and promised to review facilitation practices. I saved it under the same folder. Paper doesn't blink, but sometimes it learns. The officer called to check in and ask what Marion wanted going forward. "Safety, quiet, and time," Marion said. She also asked for something that surprised me, not to be cast as a metaphor. "I am not a lesson," she said. "I'm a person who got tired and got help." We both laughed, soft and a little wet. I thought of all the nights I'd spent writing other people's stories and decided mine would be smaller and truer, if I told it at all. We changed simple things. The locks, the patterns, the path we walk at dusk. We kept complicated things, dignity, the aunt's spare key, the cardigan on the back of my chair. When relatives asked for closure, I said, "We're working on openings." Some understood. Some unfriended. The house, which had felt like a stage, began to feel like a place again. Mom asked me to help her draft one final, merciful statement tonight. We wrote at the kitchen table, where light collects in the evening like old stories deciding which ones to keep. Marion spoke, I typed. "Please don't narrate me," she said, smiling toward the inside joke we'd earned. "Say I am resting. Say I am grateful for those who love without needing an audience. Say I will not participate in programs framed as healing when they are designed as theater. Say I am seeking counseling with people who do not need brochures." She paused, then added something I want you to have like a cup of tea placed carefully in your hands. Say if someone listening needs this, document what you notice, call people who hold lanterns, and remember that gentleness without consent is only choreography. I asked if she wanted to include advice for others. "Keep it humane," she said. So I wrote, "If you suspect you're being turned into someone else's content, protect your quiet first. Write down what hurts without decorating it. Ask for help that doesn't trend. Use pathways that honor safety more than spectacle. Involve authorities early and plainly. They have routes you do not need to invent. Share only what you must with only who must know. Let evidence speak where anger would burn oxygen. Choose boundaries over performances. Choose people who choose you in daylight." When we finished, Marion read the statement twice, then nodded. We didn't post it. We printed it and taped it inside the pantry door where we keep the cumin and the tea. We called my aunt and Lena and Priya to come over for stew. We ate too much and talked about everything except captions. Someone washed dishes. Someone else hummed the wrong harmony and laughed at herself. The house exhaled like a tired animal choosing sleep. Later, I opened my notebook and added one more line beneath the neat stack of times and phrases. We didn't win an argument. We recovered a person. I closed the cover and felt the room settle around us. We owe no one a show. We owe each other soup and daylight and names spoken gently. That's the whole story, until it isn't. Tomorrow we change the locks and choose quiet, and the house exhales.